A growing number of young Londoners are being injured in knife attacks, with a sharp rise in under 25s affected by gang violence across the capital, according to the latest figures from Scotland Yard. The worrying picture was emphasised today when a senior officer was questioned by the London Assembly. Temi Wale is the founder of the campaign group Get Out of the Gang and was at this morning's meeting. Temi, lovely to have you with us.
Good evening, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. So what do you make of the main points brought out of this meeting today?
I think the meeting today was very interesting. I think, as usual, there are a few misconceptions that continue to be pushed into these kind of government arenas. And yet there were youthful representation, or there were people there that were trying to advocate for grassroots and the things that happen on the ground. But I feel there could have been more of that. I attended the meeting and I was observing, but there was a panel, and so I wasn't part of that. I would have really liked to have been, because I felt that I had a lot of good comments to add to what they were saying.
Despite all the work being done by groups like yours across the capital, we're hearing a sharp rise, 22% of young people, up 22%, facing knife attacks. Why do you think this figure continues to rise?
I think it's interesting when we look at the figures and statistics. I'd always want to be careful, and I'm quite wary, because I do appreciate that the figures that we have are really the tip of the iceberg, because even the police will tell you themselves, and so will the A&E services, that, you know, some young people don't even go to the hospital when they're stabbed, and so we really don't have an overall picture of what knife crime actually looks like. The figure that was released today, showing a 22% increase in knife crimes for under 25s since last year, I think people would try and link that to other things. I've heard some mumblings about people trying to link that to stop and search and the reduction in stop and search. I'd be, again, very critical of that approach. I think we have to look objectively. We have to take a step back and realise that it's roughly about 10% of stop and search were actually for weapons. The majority are for drugs. And further to that, there are, you know, the arrest rate is only, again, about 15–16% in London following a stop and search, and that's not even a conviction. So I don't think we can really draw a line between the rise in knife crime and the reduction in stop and search. I don't think that's a good way to do it.
How much would the fight against knife crime, against gangs, be better served focusing less on the statistics, the number of people who are being attacked, and more on perhaps wider issues like unemployment among young Londoners and education?
Well, I think you've just got my stance exactly, because ultimately the violence is something that comes at a later stage. There are other factors and root causes that continuously are not addressed by the people that are putting provisions in place to tackle the issue. And it feels a bit like misidentifying the issue. If you only look at the violence and try and tackle the violence without appreciating those root causes, we're never really going to get further than where we are now, which is, you know, it's not that great what's happening at the moment.
There are some campaign groups who say that in order to see this number decrease, the number of knife attacks, of gang crime in the capital, you need to make the sentencing tougher. Do you agree?
I do not agree with that at all. I think people are very inclined to want to replicate an approach that's been used in America. We're already aware of the private prison industry in America and the way that America criminalises more of their population than any other country on this earth. I think we don't need tougher sentences. Again, the tougher sentences do not address the root causes. They just put young people in prison where there's very little rehabilitation, where there aren't programmes and provisions for them to address their behaviour, why they feel like they have to carry weapons in the first place, etc. Without doing any of those things, how can we just expect to put these 15, 16, 17-year-olds in prison and expect some kind of change when they come out? It's not really realistic.
Temi, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now,